She's played a huge role. So I think it's important to understand, when I was studying medicine in my second year, we decided to get married. We had already been living together for 7 years. She had a big career in Johannesburg. We got married, and while I was still studying medicine, it became clear to us that we needed to move in a new direction. So everything is done together. Often I'm the catalyst of the change, but it's done in collaboration, not in isolation. So very, very good question. The decisions seem to be made fast. The fast was the execute, not the planning and the deciding. So the key for me is, I believe not making a decision is a decision, often the wrong one in hindsight. So it's really about reflecting deeply what it is that you want to do, making sure you seek counsel with those around you. As we've spoken about before, my wife is a big part of that process for me personally. And then believe in yourself. Take that leap of faith and then persevere with the decision. Far too many people give up too soon in the process. Perseverance is critical, and that leads to success. Key thing is do it. But before you do it, you need to believe in yourself. You need to reflect deeply. You need to take the time. You need to make sure you're not just chasing butterflies, unless that's your purpose in life. But it's going through the process, weighing up the pros and cons, convincing yourself that this is the right thing, and then you have to believe that this is your journey and you need to pursue the journey. So for me, I think of there being 3 types of CIO. The first one is change-driven, the second one is stability-driven, and the third one is waiting. I'm not going to unpack the last 2. Why? Because I'm a change-driven person. So it's very much around perseverance, persistence, believing in yourself and understanding the journey that you're pursuing in the change. And then fundamentally and critically surrounding yourself with people who believe in the journey that you're on. It all comes back to self-belief. When you're on a change journey, you have to believe in the outcome that you're striving to achieve. For 2 reasons mainly. One was the peer recognition, and secondly, the industry recognition. The way CIO South Africa works is you can't nominate yourself. You're nominated by others within the industry. You go through a complex interview process with chairmen and CEOs of different boards within South Africa, and out of that comes the award. So for me, the fact of making the nomination list for South Africa was in itself a massive achievement and recognition of what I've achieved in my career. I follow a philosophy of servant leadership. So it's knowing when to lead from the front, when to lead from the pack, and when to push from behind. But having said that, it's really about asking the right questions, understanding that I know what I want to achieve. I know the outcome that I want to get, but those around me will often have better ideas or ideas just as good as mine. So the reason for asking as opposed to telling is you get to grow, they get to grow, they take ownership because it is their idea. So my collaboration is fostered through asking questions and getting buy-in to the process through a servant leadership approach. Key thing for me is, as SASFIN, we run an IT graduate program, a 2-year program of taking university leavers through a structured program. So we work on a 3-2-1 philosophy. It sounds quite brutal, but if we need 1 person in year 3, we need to identify 3 people to enter year 1. Not everybody will make it through the process, but everybody will get in-depth work experience and prepared to add value to South Africa. So the reason we do that, the first year focuses specifically on the craft and the skill that the graduate has learned at university. The second year is spent on learning financial services, in particular banking or wealth. and then the third year is becoming embedded in the organization. So that's the one tier, is identifying graduates and taking them through a program to be able to add value to South Africa through financial services. Secondly, running ongoing mentorship programs, not only within my own team, but beyond my team through CIO South Africa and other organizations, so that you can add value in that way. An important thing that I didn't cover earlier is I interview in the final process every single person that we appoint to IT in SASFIN, whether it's in the permanent teams, the graduate teams, or even in the temporary contractor teams. Thirdly is something I'm very proud of, is we run a leadership and development program within SASFIN. It initially started within IT, but it's broadened across many of the other areas within SASFIN, which works with a clinical psychologist to say, how do you lead self, teams, and organizations? So working and understanding the psychology that you need to be successful as an individual, in leading a team, and in leading an organization. So those are the three main tiers. There are others, and the fourth one being our digital coaching program that we run across the organization very successfully. We introduced digital coaching, which allows people to select a coach based on their requirements, and then go through a 6-month coaching program to help them build and develop themselves. Looping back quickly to the graduate program, I see graduates that move on as a recognition of SASFIN's success, in the sense that other organizations want to employ them into their organization. I don't see that as a loss, I see that as a win. I'm going to talk firstly about the person wanting to be mentored, and that's being open to learning and growing. You need to be prepared to expose yourself, open your soul, go through a deep process. So I have a simple process that I follow. When I mentor an individual, I have a rule of a minimum of 2, a maximum of 6. Why a minimum of 2 is the first one, I get to know who you are as a person. The second one is getting to know the journey that you're on and the journey you want to pursue. Why more than 6? More than 6 requires therapy, and that's not my specialty. You need to look at more specialized people for that. In the role when I mentor people, it's really being prepared to make the time, put the effort, do not break any trust in the process, and be understanding that what you're doing is you're crafting and guiding an individual in that process. You need to take the time and you need to put in the effort to allow them to grow and flourish in the way that they can. I never like to limit it to one, so I'm going to pick on a couple quickly. My biggest one always starts with COVID. With the pandemic, on the, I might even get the date wrong, but I think it was the 26th of March, 2020, we pivoted from everybody being in the office to everybody working from home without dropping a trade or a deal in the process. That was a huge achievement, to take all 800 people and take them from working on desktops and laptops to allocating everybody a laptop, making sure that those who didn't have Wi-Fi at home had access to data, and pivoting literally within a matter of weeks of doing that. The next one for me is very much around some of the projects I got recognized for by CIO South Africa. It's really the implementation of unitized costing and the IT operating model. Why do I pick on those two? Is if you don't understand the true cost of what you're doing, you can't understand the true value of what you're trying to achieve. And then finally was the peer recognition of being nominated for CIO of the Year in South Africa. Those were the 3 things I wanted to mention. It's a tough question. It's hard to give advice in isolation and broadly. But if I loop back to my earlier point of 3 types of CIOs, change, stability, and waiting, I'm not going to speak about the waiting because they need to retire, right? The change and the stability is you need to determine which one you are. Once you understand what type of CIO you want to be, right, it's how do you open the door and step through the door when the door is opened for you. So how do you do that? It's about creating an understanding of what you have, what your value proposition is to the world, to the organization that you're working within, and then allowing yourself to step through the door. You don't necessarily see your potential, but the person looking to appoint you sees the potential within you. So it's your CEO, your FD, your CIO, etc. They see the potential, they have the experience, and they have the trust in you. So then you've got to replicate that through having the self-belief and the perseverance. The most important thing I would share is the first 90 days in the role. You need to define your strategy. You need to understand what you want to achieve strategically once you get into the role that you need to. So whether it's stability or change, you need to be very clear in that first 3 months, because that's the first 3 months that you get carte blanche. People trust you, they give you latitude to influence. After that, you're part of the furniture, right? And it becomes really hard to do anything radical. And it's about knowing what you want to add. If people don't want what you want to add, that gives you the fork in the road and you move on. And it's as simple as that. So you know what your value proposition is, you know what you're bringing to the table. Organizations go through periods of growth, organizations go through periods of consolidation, and it needs different mindsets. And I always use an analogy when I mentor, is if you look at presidents and prime ministers, they're those who bring about change and they're those who bring about stability. But you don't get people who do both. It's their very nature. So I'm going to pick on somebody that I like to use as a reference. If you look at Winston Churchill as the Prime Minister of the UK, an absolute brilliant Prime Minister during World War II. Post the war, absolute terrible Prime Minister. Same person, different world, right? That's my brutal example to show how different people are for different times. The first thing is you have to be open, right? If you're not prepared to be open, then you're in isolation and you need to be an analyst or somebody outside of the realm. As a CIO, you don't have that choice. So the first thing is to determine where and when to participate and be open to network. As a CIO, you will get far too many invitations to lunches, dinners, talks, etc. You need to be very, very selective to see what aligns with your aspiration and the journey that you're on, and then make the effort, make the time, prioritize it, to be there, to be present, and to be heard. You'll be surprised at how many people will reach out to you, but you don't need to be the flamboyant person out there being the center of attention. Some of you will, some CIOs will, most will not by their very nature. So make the effort. Obviously, I love South Africa. It's the most diverse, beautiful place in the world with beautiful people. But living in South Africa, you feel spoiled and you always look outside for places that you want to travel to. So firstly, I love Switzerland. The beauty of Switzerland is beyond description. So I love Switzerland for its natural beauty, absolutely spectacular. Secondly, I love Ireland for its people. The most amazing people you will meet ever in your life. And thirdly, I love France. Why do I love France? Because they live life. They live to live. There are lots and lots of books. I'm going to pick on one, and I'm going to pick on The Founder's Mentality. It was a book given to me by Roland Souchon when he was retiring and handing over to Michael. And I read it, and there was something that profoundly stayed with me. Founders have this habit at the start of every week of clearing the obstacles that are preventing their organization from succeeding. So the thing that I've implemented is every Monday at 10 o'clock, my IT Manco meets, and any obstacles that need to be addressed to allow delivery gets addressed. In the early days when I started that, I had a long list of problems that I had to deal with, and by Tuesday I had done with all of them. Now, 9 times out of 10, It's just a check-in.